Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. It's the worst when you're being nice becomes expected and taken for granted. In our first story, the OP encountered evil relatives who tried to use him. Well, they all got what they deserved in the end. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Entitled relatives think they deserve more than my adopted son. To give some context here, I must say that I'm an IT engineer with toxic family relationships. I did cut off my father and uncles and aunts, yet I keep in contact with my cousins and their children, which somehow I treat as mine, as I had none and I'm an only child, therefore it's the closest I got. I always prioritize success over relationships, so I'm single, and through the years I felt that my cousin's children weren't mine, therefore I wanted to raise one of my own. It took me some time, but finally I adopted an 8-year-old kid. As those usually age out of foster care, I love the experience of raising a kid, yet I've had to deal with some entitledness from my cousins. It turns out that every now and then I usually spend some money traveling with my cousins and their children, yet this year, for obvious reasons, I needed to save money in order to get all the stuff my son would need, and I'm planning on going big, the best of the best I could afford. I just explained this to my cousins and told them that this year our trip together would be canceled. They said nothing, so I thought they understood the whole situation. Anyway, I wanted my kids to socialize with my cousin's children, so I invited them all to a get-together party after about 2 months when my son felt comfortable enough, and somehow all of the kids were so mad and refused to play with my kid. He'd just sit in a corner and try not to cry, but he did. I just talked with the kids, and they said he wasn't part of the family, and they deserve more, as he's adopted, and they, as my family, were entitled to the trip to the parks in Florida. I was in shock and asked them where they got that from, and they told me how their parents have told them the reason why I took their trip was my son, who comes from the streets and isn't even family. I was fuming. So I told them all to leave. I had a Zoom meeting with just my cousins who tell me that their children must come first, and I told them they made me realize my son comes first, so I canceled their college funds, their private school tuition, and just told them that if my kid is not part of their family, neither am I, and they were cut off. I've been called unreasonable, but I think my son comes first, and I made the right decision. And our second story. Mother-in-law insisted she wanted a drink, so I gave it to her. Mother-in-law never really liked me because I got her adult son to move out of their home and have a good life. She's the type to question every success you have, all the while downplaying anything in your life. Honestly, I don't know why father-in-law is still with her. Yesterday was her daughter's birthday. I love her very much, like my own sister, and although she can't have an extravagant 21st birthday, we planned a nice dinner at our home. We brought everything we needed as well as drinks. She's 21 after all. She requested we get some soju. Now, for those who don't know what that is, it's a popular Korean alcohol drink. It's in these bright green bottles packaged within this bright green box, usually plastered with portraits of cute girls looking like they love this drink. At a glance, it doesn't look like alcohol since American beers and such are more bland looking than this. Since their home basically had nothing for us to use for the meats we brought over, we had to go to the store a lot of times, including the birthday girl herself. We really tried to make the best of this situation, but the entire time, mother-in-law was running her mouth. "What? There's no soy sauce? What the hell?" says the woman sitting and playing on her phone, not helping us look. "Why would you move to a cheap place? What did you expect? Of course it's going to crap now," says the woman who never paid for her house. Father-in-law pays for everything. "Don't cook there. It's going to smell like meat," she says while we're cooking in the kitchen. What's the kitchen supposed to be used for? These are only a few examples of everything she said that night. Father-in-law was nowhere to be seen since she usually runs her mouth until he's had enough. I was mixing my concoction of soju, Yakult, and Sierra Mist by the time she hovers over the kitchen. She asked me what I was doing with a grimace on her face. Me: "It's a Korean drink." Mother-in-law: "Why are you not making me one?" Me. Are you sure this isn't just a normal drink? It's mother-in-law. Stop excluding me. I want one. Says the woman who basically sat through everything and complained the whole time. We did try to include her, but all we got were sarcasm and complaints. I roll my eyes and start making her one. Until I realize we got flavored soju, meaning it literally tastes like juice. So you best believe I just dunked half a bottle in that cocktail and served it with minimal Yakult and Sierra Mist. She grumbles, that wasn't so hard, was it? Every time she sees me head into the kitchen, she yells for me to make her another drink. LOL, okay, I keep doing so. Father-in-law joins me in the kitchen and was reading the bottles. He looks at me with a raised brow, just in time for mother-in-law to yell for another drink. In her mind, she's asking me nicely, but really all we hear is screeching. Me. Should I give her more? Father-in-law. You heard her. Father-in-law shrugs with an evil grin. The nicest man was telling me to maliciously comply. Eventually, she starts to mellow out. No more yelling, no more complaints. Everyone was happy for the rest of the night. She actually was in such a good mood, she went upstairs and went to bed early. Such a good mood, in fact, father-in-law joined us for movie night after dinner. Sister just messaged me today and said that night was by far the best night she's had. Now all you have to do is get her drunk during any family gathering. And our next story. Sweet revenge on my landlord. I live in an expensive part of the United States. To live in a 500 square foot cottage, it cost me $2,100 upon moving in. The 70-year-old landlady gave me the impression that the space would be a private sanctuary. She failed to mention that from the moment I moved in, she'd start doing loud, invasive, and extensive work on my property. To give you a little idea of the space, there's a 3-bedroom house next door. And then there's my place, a separate unit with its own yard. Attached is yet another unit that's been under construction. The landlady told me she planned on building a dance studio. She failed to mention that she'd be building this when I signed the lease. Originally, the space was a 2-bedroom, but she built a closet separating the unit and turned it into a small 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom with a tiny kitchen with a living room. It's expensive. But hey, it's by the beach, secluded, and I thought I would have privacy. Boy, was I wrong. The landlady and her workers are here every single day from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., sometimes later. Just generally when it gets dark outside, she has an unlicensed contractor working from 3 to 8 p.m. because that's the only time I can get him since he has a day job. They're cutting stones, doing all kinds of landscaping, redoing different structural parts of the houses, so loud hammering. But worst of all, the landlady is just always there. It felt like she was constantly watching me. I can't keep my windows open or have the luxury of walking around naked in my own home because there's someone always there. The last thing I want when I come home at 5 p.m. after a long day of work is to hear loud noises, let alone my landlady. I put up with this crap because I didn't want to create conflict. But then she left an eviction notice in my mailbox informing me that she smelled some cigarette smoke and that I had to move out within 30 days. Despite me being frustrated with the situation, I'm very busy with work and didn't want to deal with finding a new place. I just moved in 4 months prior, and it's a pain in the butt to find a place to live in this town. Luckily for me, she didn't realize that a just cause eviction law had recently passed in the city. I wrote her a lengthy letter informing her that she doesn't have grounds kicking me out based on a smell and must pay me to move out. Here's the revenge. I went down to the city and informed them that I have a hunch she'd illegally turned her unit into a duplex. They came to my place the next day. I let them inspect my residence and showed them the work she'd been doing in the unit connected to mine. They said they'd look into it. I get a response from her lawyer letting me know that she was in fact wrong and can't kick me out. She told my wife that she thinks that I'm evil and that she had to go to therapy because of my letter. She also told her that the house got red tagged because I reported her to the city, so now she can't have a duplex anymore and is going to have to occupy the other half as a room. Say bye-bye to your plans on building a dance studio. She'll also have to demo all the work that's already been done, because she didn't get permits, all because she was upset that she thought she smelled smoke in the house. I have never felt so good getting someone back using these city laws against them. F landlords that try to screw people out of a home because they're control freaks. I definitely taught her a lesson, and I'm moving out at the end of the month because I don't want to live here anymore. And our last story. I'm with him. You know, the owner? This happened about 4 years ago, not long after my father purchased a Vietnamese restaurant. My father was the executive pastor at his church. I helped out around the church so that Dad wouldn't have to spend all day working. My parents live on a lake, so my dad and I would often go fishing on Sunday nights if he had time. On days that I would come and help with the cleanup, he'd typically take me to his restaurant as compensation. We both love pho, so this was as much for him as it was for me. Well, when we got to his restaurant one Sunday afternoon, one of the members of the church was eating there with her 2 sons. Everyone knew my father owned the place, so it was pretty common to see people from church there. I know that my dad was annoyed to see her eating out because she was unemployed and actually received aid from the church to help with her living expenses. We had several families that were longtime attendees who got aid in one form or another. Shortly after we were seated, we heard a commotion coming from this lady and someone on the waitstaff. Basically, church lady tried to leave without paying her bill, and when she was approached, she informed the waitress that she was with my father and I, so she wouldn't have to pay either. My dad had to get up and deal with the situation. He informed church lady that he actually always pays for our meals, and if he'd invited her to lunch, he would have gladly covered her meal. But as she'd come of her own accord, she'd need to pay. Of course, she was pissed about this, but did end up paying in the end. Church lady actually went to the senior pastor afterwards and explained how unchristian it was of my dad. I don't know any specifics, but I'm sure she embellished the situation. My father left this church less than 6 months later because he felt that the senior pastor was taking advantage of his time. No good deed goes unpunished, even within the Christian community. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.